Hi, I'm John Townsend, and we've got some great questions today, some really funny comments. And the main question is about the kinds of pipe tobacco available in the 18th century. Thanks for joining us today on Questions and Answers with James Townsend and Son. I want to begin this with a quick shout out to the folks at Conner Prairie. My wife and I and two of my daughters, along with Kevin and his daughter, we went down to one of their hearthside dinners a week or so ago, and it was an amazing experience. We went there, we walked out to the site with candle lanterns, we helped cook a meal, then we had this sit-down meal with lots of folks, and then we had parlor games afterwards. It's an amazing program that they do there, and I know there are similar programs around the country with different kinds of historic sites done in different ways. If you're interested in that, you're in this area, make sure to contact Conner Prairie. And if you're interested in that, make sure to check with your local historic site. See if they do something like that. These are amazing programs that are being done. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description section so you can go check out Conner Prairie's video that describes their program. Okay, first comment here. Valid theory or preposterous hypothesis, the pudding cloth served as a cook's do-rag while not in use. Okay, you might think this is funny, and it is funny, but the interesting thing about most of these, or many times in these 18th century cookbooks, when they talk about these pudding cloths, they actually mention to make sure the pudding cloth doesn't have that you pre-soak it in hot water and that it's clean from any kind of soap residue or anything. So they were concerned about their pudding cloths and whether they were, let's say, not clean. Here's one that came in on the last cooking episode. I think if I had to cook in a fireplace, I prefer the one that Jazz uses in his shows. The full fireplaces are so easy to catch a skirt on fire. Jazz, is your kitchen fireplace your own design, or was it something that could be found in the 1700s? So he's talking about the difference between the cooking hearth that we used at Gunston Hall, which is right there on the floor. It's a nice wide cooking hearth. It's very typical of the 18th century. And the one that we usually use when we're doing cooking episodes. And that's actually a hearth set that I built. That's actually based on the German farmhouse at Frontier Culture Museum in Staunton, Virginia. And that's an actual German farmhouse from the late 18th century. And that one has a raised hearth. I raised mine just a little bit higher to make it even easier. Number one, I wanted to have the cooking surface right up there at height, so it was much easier to shoot with a camera as opposed to cooking way down on the ground, as is typical of most of the English hearths of the time period. Although at times you'll see that same kind of raised hearth design in the occasional English setting, as well as in most of Northern Europe. So there is quite a bit of a different design, but that is the raised hearth based on an 18th century design. Here's a quick little question. Why a tin frying pan instead of a cast iron one? Most of the frying pans we use, or all the frying pans we use, are the kind that we actually sell here at James Townsend and Son. It's not tin, but it's actually sheet iron or sheet steel that's been formed into a frying pan, which is really typical of the 18th century style fry pans. You really don't see that many of the cast iron ones. That's more of a 19th century and even early 20th century design for a fry pan that he's probably referring to here. This question came in on the Akara episode that we did at Gunston Hall. Do you recommend using lard or peanut oil as the frying grease to get an authentic flavor? And I would suggest lard would be the most commonly used frying oil in that kind of a setting. This question came in on the soup, stew, and hash episode that we did several years ago. Are most of the tips gleaned from research or from experience making these dishes? And it's really both. What you need to do is do the research ahead of time, and then you have to experience. You have to do it to understand what's going on with the recipe, or else it just doesn't make any sense. Here's one that came in on the last Q&A. I was on your website today, but I kept seeing the word costume. Is this the material that's worn then, or is it toy, meaning only meant to be worn at home? Thank you. Good question. We actually have added the costume line of garments here in the last several years because many people don't necessarily need the full authentic kind of piece of garments. And almost all of our costume pieces are actually cut exactly the same way that our standard pieces are cut, but they tend to be made a little less expensively without lining sometimes, and at times we change the construction method a little bit so that we can get away without lining the garment, so we can make it less expensive. But almost all the time, the materials are still authentic and the look is authentic. So really, they're not so much costume as being unusable in a setting where you would actually go to reenactment. Sometimes it's just basically a less expensive version of the same thing. This question came in on the lighting episode. Was Micah used in the 18th century as a substitute for glass? I haven't seen a lot of mica used. It certainly wouldn't have been used in inexpensive situations. What's going to be used instead of glass is horn. They shaved cow horn really thin and they used it as a substitute for glass many times in lanterns. You can see that they were using something other than glass because the glass is burnt, or the panes in the lantern is burnt. Sometimes you'll see like a lantern overturned and a black spot on the glass. Actually, that's probably where the horn has been burnt by the candle. I like this one. It came in on the last Q&A. Anyone want to volunteer to build a replica 18th century ship's galley for James Townsend and Son? What do you think? This one's a good question. It came in on the first earthen oven video that we've done. That is a very, very popular video. A lot of people, especially it's starting to be spring, many people want to build earthen ovens. Here's the question. Hi, John. After over 6 years you've built this oven, how did it hold up? Is it still in working order, or how long did it hold up? I will finally have a place to build one this autumn or late summer, and I'm interested in your experience on the longevity. Great question. And, both the oven that we built in that first episode and Kevin built one at home later on that summer, both of these ovens are still in usable condition. You have to put a roof over them or they will wash away with the rain. But if you've got a good roof over your oven, it will last a long time. If you're interested in earthen ovens, especially building one, I have a series of videos where we build different ovens. I've got a playlist of that. I'll put it down in the description section of this video. Here's a great one. George Washington himself is asking this one. I got a question for you. You said you were interested in filmography and photography. Have you looked at filmography and photography of the 17th and 18th century? Okay. Here's an excellent question, Andrew Shook. What would be the best 18th century starter cookbook to get started with? If there was one cookbook that I would recommend to get started with, this one's actually, it's called Martha Washington's Book of Cookery. And it's actually not full of 18th century cooking or recipes, but more like 17th century recipes. But the great part is Karen Hess has gone in here and she's done commentary for all the different recipes. And so these 17th century recipes can be even harder to understand than 18th century ones. She goes in and explains what's going on with the measurements and with the techniques. And usually the commentary is 3 or 4 times longer than the recipe. So she really gives you the ability or the understanding about how to interpret some of these recipes. Excellent cookbook. Another good one for just simple 18th century cooking, The Complete Housewife by E. Smith or Eliza Smith here. It doesn't have any commentary in it, but it's a great, just middle of the road 18th century cookbook with basically a good set of recipes to look at and start to try to understand. Both of these cookbooks, we don't sell at James Townsend and Son, but I will put an affiliate link down so you can look at them on Amazon. I'll put that down in the description title or the description section of this video. Now, cookbooks we do carry. A good starter one is a primitive cookery cookbook. This one actually sort of has excerpts from multiple different cookbooks in the time period. They're basically simple things, simple recipes from the time period. Most of them don't have meat, so it's a good one for basically inexpensive cooking. So we've got that one. I'll put a link down in the description section. That's one of the ones we carry, and it's printed in an 18th century manner, along with this one's Amelia Simmons' 1796 cookbook called American Cookery. A very, thin book, but this is really the first American cookbook that comes out, and it's got some great recipes and helps you understand what's happening with American cookery and how they have to adapt English cookery to the kind of ingredients that we have available to us in North America in the 18th century. This one, they're much more just ideas for recipes instead of hard and fast recipes. So you get an idea, again, about what they had to work with when they bought a cookbook in the 18th century. Okay, so here's the main question. Christopher writes, I have the white stoneware pipe. I'm not a regular smoker, but definitely it's my favorite pipe. Question, how did tobacco in the 18th century differ from pipe tobacco that we find today? And he asks about historical tobacco producers. Some excellent questions about pipe smoking and tobacco. Okay, so I'm not an expert on pipe smoking, pipe tobacco of the 18th century. I asked Ryan, though, here. He's done some research specifically about that. And here's what Ryan says about pipe tobacco. So apparently the bulk tobacco that is most of what people use today is not typically the kind of style that you would find if you were looking at references for pipe tobacco in the 18th century. Typically in the 18th century, compressed forms of tobacco were much more common. So he says twist tobacco, flake tobacco, cone, and bullseye were the most popular kinds of pipe tobacco that you would find to smoke immediately there in the 18th century. Today, what we have is bulk tobacco. And he hasn't seen any reference to actually people purchasing that to smoke in their pipes in the 18th century. So these other compressed forms are available today. So those would be more proper forms if you're going to be trying to smoke a pipe in an 18th century kind of form. And apparently one of the reasons why they would use these compressed forms is they smoke differently. They won't damage your pipe as much in the kinds of situations or environments that they had to smoke within in the 18th century. That's a lot about tobacco. If you have specific research that you've done on tobacco, and you want to chime in the comment section, I would love to hear about what the kind of experiences you've had with that, or if you've done research on 18th century tobaccos in the 18th century. Also, it's time that events are starting to happen, and people are getting excited about the spring. I know I'm getting excited. We've got lots of stuff on our calendar, different websites or different historic sites that we're going to, and if you have an event that you are in charge of or really like to go to, we have a site called livinghistorynetwork.com, and it's got a calendar on there. If you want your event to be on that calendar, go to the website. There's a link along this side of the screen that will help you sign up and get your event on the calendar. I really want to thank everyone for your amazing support, especially those folks that help us out over on Patreon. We added a new tier that lets you go ahead and participate in private Q&A sessions that we do occasionally or once or twice a month. So that's kind of fun. And everyone else, I really want to thank you for your amazing support. When you watch videos, you give them a thumbs up or you give us a comment, you share the videos on social media. All that helps us so much. It means a lot, and it helps us continue to do what we need to do to make these great fun videos. Thank you so much for all your support, and thanks for watching.
We're here at the second annual The Revolution in Huntington Beach, and we just wanted to do a quick shout out to James Townsend and Son for making reenacting accessible to the average reenactor. We have so many of our guys kitted out here today. Products from James Townsend and Son. I was just drinking out of my GR mug. You have your Spontoon.
Beautiful. Also, most of my kit here is from them. Custom made. Fits me perfectly.
And we're going to go have some Syllabugs. So, thanks again.